Alright, we're going to begin our reassembly with the bolt, and we're going to begin with the firing pin. As you can see, I've already started driving our pin back in that holds the firing pin in place. The thing rocks around quite a bit, and going ahead and getting a head start on that is going to really save you a lot of hassle. So I went ahead and got it in there, hit it a few times with a larger pin to get it started, and right before it started coming through the groove there, I held off. So now we're going to put our firing pin spring back down in that groove, give it a tap or two, and it'll eventually go into its place where it rests against a little ledge inside there. Then we're going to take our firing pin, and from the back we're going to slide it in. Make sure the spring pushes it back. And now for this hard part, driving that little pin the rest of the way in. Okay, now that we've got our pin back in, we had to beat it several times, so to make sure it lines up right, and you do have spring action on your firing pin. Once you get to that point, now we're ready to put our extractor back in. Starting with the spring, get him in there, followed by the plunger. Then we're going to take our handy dandy pick, pull the plunger back down, being very careful not to shoot it. And then we're going to put our extractor back in, flat side down, hook facing up and in. It's just going to rest in there, let your plunger back out, and there we go. What you want to look for is your plunger, get in focus there, plunger to be up against the extractor just like that. You also want to see the extractor looking like that and having spring tension coming back. That completes the bolt reassembly. Next we will get the bolt and the barrel all back together in the receiver. Alright, next we're going to reinstall the barrel to the receiver. To do that, we're going to take the barrel and the receiver, we're going to put it back in the hole that it came in, and my tip is to go ahead and line up the 4 holes in your rail with your iron sights. That'll get you kind of in the right direction there, and it will seat properly once you put your retaining block in. Mine's still fairly new, so I'm going to give it one good solid pop in the back. It's still nice and straight, and that's all there is to it. We'll need to put our retaining block back on with the 2 retaining screws. Alright, we'll go ahead and tighten these down with even pressure. And do not over tighten. There we go. The barrel and receiver assembly is complete. Alright, now we're ready to replace our guide rod, spring, and charging handle assembly, as well as the bolt and bolt buffer. Our old assembly we're going to set aside. We're not going to use that. We're going to use a Power Custom model. It has one of the longer charging handles I could find, and a decent look too. This is a one-way deal, so we're going to kind of line it up, and the groove is going to face up. So keep that intact. Here's a tip. Decompress your spring on your guide rod, put your charging handle on, maintain pressure, and then cut yourself a little tiny piece of paper clip, slide through the hole at the end. There's no retention mechanism on this unit, and that'll keep it in place until you get it inside. Alright, now just like the other one came out, we're going to slide this in. It sits on the little divot in the back. Now this is going to be a two-handed operation here. We're going to depress the spring using both hands, otherwise it will bind up on us, all the way back. We're going to take a pair of pliers and get our cheater bar out, because we don't want that floating around in there when we're shooting rounds off. Alright, now your bolt is going to go in next with your notch facing down and forward. We're going to rock it in there top first, lock in the handle, then the back, give it a little pressure, and then it'll slide forward. Make sure it cycles with no problems. Now that can be a little hairy sometimes. Get better the more you do it. Alright, now we can put our bolt buffer back in, and we can just press that in this time. There you go. So now our receiver and our barrel assembly is complete. Okay, now we're ready to reassemble our trigger assembly. In our top left corner, we're going to have what comes in the Volquartsen Target Hammer set. Strut spring, trigger plunger spring, hammer, assembly, and a cheater pin. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start with the trigger, the disconnector, and the sear, along with the sear spring and the disconnector pin. So what we're going to do is we're going to take, move that out of the way, we're going to take the trigger and the disconnector, and with the little hook of the disconnector facing towards the big hole, we're going to line this up with the small hole and insert our disconnector pin, like so. Then we're going to put our sear, and we're going to line the divot that's in the sear against the divot that's in the disconnector. They're going to face each other. We're going to line that up with the larger hole. We're going to open that gap up, and we're going to put the sear spring in that divot and then put it in to the disconnector. It'll kind of pop in, and this can fly apart, and the Volquartsen kit comes with a cheater pin, and that's what it's for. You don't have to have it, but man, it's a convenience item that once you use, you'll always want. So there's our sub-assembly. Okay, also that comes with it is the trigger plunger spring. So we're going to put it here, and we're going to put the old one to the side. We're going to set the spring back in the hole behind where the trigger is, followed by the plunger. Nothing's going to keep it in but the trigger, so you're going to have to kind of balance it in there for the moment. Next, we're going to drop our spring in from the top, kind of roll it in, and the flat part will line up with your plunger. Go ahead and give it a squeeze and make sure it's functioning, and then stick your finger on top of the sear on the inside until you can see your cheater pin line up. If you don't have the cheater pin, you still have to put your finger in there like that and line everything up. So now we're going to take our trigger pin, just kidding, trigger pin, push out our cheater pin. A lot of pins floating around here. So there you go. It's functioning. We'll move our cheater pin out of the way. Next, we're going to get rid of our old hammer, and we're going to assemble our new Volquartsen Target Hammer. In the lowest hole, we're going to go ahead and take a bushing and put it on our assembly, slide it through the hole, another bushing, followed by the outer cap with the narrow edge facing out. Okay, we are going to reuse our bolt lock spring, and the piece with the dog leg will be facing towards the front of the trigger assembly. The part with the notch on the hammer will be facing the rear. Take the little loop on the spring, put it around your assembly in the bottom, and slide it in. We are lining up this hole right here. Now you may need to finagle it around and squeeze the trigger in to get it to move the way you want it. Get it close, get your trigger or your hammer pin, get it started. There you go. You have to give it a rotation and it'll pop right in. Okay. Next, we're going to be replacing our manual bolt lock, throw it to the side, with our auto bolt lock. You can see the difference is this little cutout looks like a little heart. That's the manual. This one doesn't. You can grind that out, but for $8, it's just kind of nice to have a brand new one. We're going to orient this like so. Our little leg sticking out, it's got the notch on it, and that dog leg of our bolt lock spring is going to set in that notch once we get it in there. So we'll go ahead and slide it straight down the top, just like that. We're going to take our extractor pin, put it through that hole, and that'll hold that in place. We're going to take our extractor, oriented just like that. We're going to loop it around the extractor pin, and then go ahead and put it in the notch it lives in. It'll keep it from floating around. Next, if you can see in there or not, the dog leg of that pin is in fact in the notch in the bottom of the bolt lock plate. So the top of that spring is a straight leg and it's sticking out of the receiver or the trigger assembly right now. We're going to take that with our finger, push it down, slide the pin right over top of it, and that's going to retain that pin. Okay, that concludes that part. The next step is going to be replacing the magazine release, plunger spring, and pin. We are replacing the magazine release with the Volquartsen style. As you can see, there's not a whole big difference, which I was a little disappointed when I first got it out. But this big cutout here in the factory one makes it a little difficult to maneuver. This thing pivots on this hole. So you kind of get up in there and you have to hit that pivot. This one has a much larger surface and greater odds of getting what you're needing to get with that shape. It doesn't look like much difference, but it makes a world of a difference. For the $10 that costs, another great value. So to reinstall this, we're going to get our plunger and plunger spring, put them back together, stick them through the hole in the front, press it in. We're going to take our magazine release. It's a good idea to go ahead and line up the hole here, and this is going to be your auto bolt plate. It's also going to go through there. Make sure it's lined up through your pinhole. Go ahead and stick your release in. You can let go of your plunger, and then you have to finagle around with the pin a little and the bolt release, and there it goes. Make sure your extractor's back in the position where it belongs. Pull your trigger and release your hammer, and then grab your hammer strut assembly. Okay, we're going to replace this spring. It also came with a Volquartsen kit. To get this spring off this assembly, we're going to depress the spring, slide this lock washer off the top, and be careful it doesn't go flying. It takes quite a bit of pressure, and just like that it pops off. Put the new spring on, depress, slide your washer back on. It locks right on. In the rear of your trigger assembly there's a hole. Your washer will slide down in there, and the top of your strut will hook into the hammer. Okay, go ahead and cock it back, and don't let it slap fire, it's not good for it. So to kind of keep your finger over it, go ahead and pull the trigger a few times. Notice how it takes about 4 pounds less pressure. It does what it says. It's at the average around 6 3/4 factory pounds, and with this installation it gives you under 4, closer to 3. So there you go. Check your safety and it still functions. That concludes the trigger assembly. Okay, we're ready to put our trigger assembly back into our receiver, and it's going to go in the same way we took it out. So make sure that's oriented correctly. Put it in the receiver, grab your pins, slide them back in. Alright, just to keep this within 2 parts, I went ahead and pre-assembled the Tapco stock system and installed the rifle into it. You're going to have 2 options for your buttstock. You're going to have an angled and a straight. I prefer the angled, just me. I like the way it gets it up, kind of angles it up off my shoulder. What you're going to do to get your actual butt on is pull this thing down. You adjust it once it's on by pushing it in, pull it down to stick it on. You do have a little chamber in there. Pistol grip goes on with a nut inside the handle. And the same way, this one has a breakdown screw that goes the same place. And then up top in the front, you're going to have 6 drywall screws that cinch down the front. I went ahead and put on a Tapco little stubby front grip, and then reinstalled my True Glow red-green dot. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions or comments or concerns, please leave them at the bottom, and look forward to seeing you on the next project.